Has World War III already begun? An axis of autocracies led by Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea is challenging the democratic world order. The author, Yaroslav Trofimov, and I've probably mispronounced his name, he always has excellent articles and insights. But here he has missed the big picture. Just like the Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, The Atlantic, they've all missed the big picture on this question. It comes up again and again. As the saying goes, you can't see the forest for the trees. But they are so involved in the details of the situation that they lose sight of the larger issue. The thesis is that these rogue actors of Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea, none of which adhere to international law or norms of conduct in the treatment of their own citizens and in their international relations, they're all uniformly bellicose and aggressive. The author misses the point. The mistake made by the article is also made by academics and politicians who parrot Beijing's talking point that Beijing's Marxist model is an alternative system to the liberal democratic model of Western nations. When I say Western, that includes Japan, South Korea, India, and other nations in Africa, the Pacific, and the Americas that follow a liberal democratic tradition of freedom of speech, press, assembly, religion. They pride themselves on the treatment and respect for minority peoples and faith traditions in their countries. The forest that has been missed is that it is to democracies that the citizens of the world wish to go. They do not wish to go to dictatorships. They do not wish to be in or go to autocracies. We will all instinctively defend our own people and our own homeland, regardless of the political makeup above us. That is a natural reaction. But don't miss the bigger point. Nobody wants to live under the heel of these dictatorships if given the choice. Remember, China spends more monitoring its own citizens than it does on national defense. And this spending is done in terms of smartphone monitoring, cameras, social scores, apartment building monitors, Face ID, censorship of the internet and social media. For example, at the beginning of the 20s, over 1 million Muslim men were in internment camps in Western China to re-educate them and denigrate the Muslim faith. They also run labor camps. China is more terrified of her own people than the United States. They cannot allow protests against corruption. They cannot allow protests over scandals to gain traction, so they shut it down. Now they have high unemployment for youth. In fact, the underemployment and unemployment for university-educated youth is a threat to their country because sometimes revolutions start on university campuses. And now they have a new slang word called lying flat. And that's where young Chinese people reject the pressures to conform and put their nose to the grindstone and don't even work. The hermit kingdom of North Korea is a walking human rights violation. You can't even get to the heavily guarded border between North and South Korea. It's so heavily guarded. And if you were to get to China on the other side, North Korea will hunt you down and bring you back in. They have slave labor camps arrayed along the Chinese border. They have total control of the information that comes into the country. They are petrified of their own citizens, as all Marxist dictatorships are. Iran fears their own people. They brutally crack down on revolts. If people knew of the hundreds of billions of dollars that Iran has sent to Syria, to Hamas, to the Houthi rebels in Yemen, to the Venezuelan dictatorship in South America, they would be up in arms. But that is kept from them. The only people to whom the governing systems of China and Russia is attractive are to wannabe dictators and autocrats. These are people who would like to steal their people's property, abuse their citizens, execute their citizens, in exchange for naval or air bases for China and Russia. China and Russia will look the other way, and they will offer arms and training for the interior police of this autocrat. Mr. Trofimov's article goes on about the rise of this axis of four. And we should not underestimate the impact of the feckless foreign policy that started back with President Barack Obama, who started his administration with an apology tour to Cairo, Egypt, to Europe, to the United Nations to apologize for past American actions. How these four powers must have laughed and pleased at the same time. Barack Obama's red line on chemical warfare in Syria turned out to be no red line. Our non-existent present administration of President Biden, a man of diminished capacity, oversaw the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, billions of dollars of weapons left behind. After the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, our present administration did enough to prevent the collapse of Ukraine, but prevented a victory through its rules of engagement. Good work, President Biden. Now you have North Korean soldiers killing Ukrainians. Today, I don't blame Europeans for their low esteem of their own progressive leaders, who have done little to bolster their nation's militaries since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But don't mistake this as weakness of the actual system. The force that Mr. Trofimov has missed is that the leaders of each four countries fear their own citizens more than they fear the West. That's why their interior police forces are strong. That's why their monitoring of their citizens is strong. Their willingness to kill their own citizens must be maintained. Do not forget that the only way that a dictatorship stays in power is if it is willing to kill its own citizens in order to survive. If there is no fear of the dictatorship will fall. They have no legitimacy. For 75 years, China has never had a free election. For 74 years, North Korea has never had a free election. Independent journalists are almost non-existent in Russia after imprisonments, after poisonings, after so-called suicides where people, quote-unquote, jump out of windows. These countries have the strength of a cancer. It's vigorous on the outside, dead on the inside. Yes, China's military is strong and getting stronger. Yes, China's industrial base is strong to support that military, but they are still afraid of their own citizens. Don't forget, a 12-year-old male who immigrates from Harbin, China to the United States, who joins the U.S. Army at age 21, will fight harder for his family and his new country than he would have for the PLA. Now you can read about the weaknesses of the Chinese system in my book, China, Demise of a Civilization, the 11 Principles of History and Economics Against the Chinese Marxist Model. Thank you.